Detour by Dottie Childers Gravely. Next, this detour led me to about a week in the stroke unit. Nursing staff pushed my bed down corridors and elevators to my new location. A hall full of stroke victims sounds depressing, but God poured out grace on me. People were still praying for me. I soon saw how blessed I had been when I compared myself to others there. Alan found out that there are two types of strokes. An aneurysm is a weakened, bulging blood vessel which can break, leading to a bleeding stroke. The other kind is a blood clot. I had friends who had aneurysms. Some had survived, others had not. I could only place myself into God's hands to let Him make the decision in my case, life or death. Again, I remembered Sharon's verse. This sentence of death was going to teach me not to trust in myself, but in God who raises the dead. My job was to keep my heart pure before Him and listen for His voice as best I could with all the fatigue and medicine. One thing I definitely knew would please the Lord. I had to rid myself of any critical attitude toward others, especially toward Alan. Since we were both semi-retired, we have lots of time together under the same roof. Sometimes there had been little frictions that needed to go. It wasn't hard because Alan had been such a prince in my helpless state. Also, I felt that I needed to renew my desire and vow from my youth to live always with the Lord before me. As David describes in Psalm 16:8, it was impressed upon me that the kingdom of God rolls in real time. The past can be helpful. The future hasn't happened yet. But the present, the time we have a shadow, is the time to do God's bidding. With my mind armed with that perspective, I began to be more aware of the interests and needs of those around me. Love welled up in me for others. One of my nursing assistants had given me a hug as I left ICU. On the weekends, my sister Judy and her husband Mark came all the way from the Chattanooga area. Brother number 6 Roland and his wife Tricia came from southern Tennessee. Tricia told us about their recent visit to the Lincoln Memorial in Illinois. She told me that Abraham Lincoln looked sad because he had lost the love of his life to death, Anne Rutledge, before he could marry her. One weekend, Ronald and Linda and their daughter Paula dropped in. Diane and Ronnie were there then, so the two Rons got to know each other better. While they were all there, through the door walked a very special lady, Christy. She was one of the younger women in our Tuscaloosa church when some of us older women did a women's ministry there, Titus 2:4. At age 39, Christy had a brain aneurysm herself. That was 6 years earlier. Now she is fine and even goes deer hunting with her sons and husband. She and my daughter Allison had been Facebooking about my condition. I was expecting her the following week, but she came early. Her positive, bright smile cheered up everyone in the room. Patients on the stroke hall got to sleep more without all the checking for vital signs, etc. during the night. Each day and night, every 12 hours, I was assigned an RN and a techie, a personal care technician or nursing assistant. I loved them. One RN had once lived in Tuscaloosa and knew some of my friends because we had attended the same church at different times. Her husband was interested in biblical counseling, so I introduced her to Joel when he returned from the D.C. area to spend the night with me. He worked as a biblical counselor and is the same Joel who once helped terrorize the kindergarten Sunday school class at the Tuscaloosa church my nurse had attended. Pratty had wanted to come, but they decided that it would not be the best time. Their relationship was continuing. Joel seemed to be a happy man. One day I deliberately mentioned to the RN something that the youth pastor at the church, Riverwood Presbyterian Church, had said to my older daughter's youth group. His advice about finding a Christian mate went something like this. Just as when you walk in the forest and keep looking up at the sun, you will bump into a tree. Likewise, if you will just walk through life and keep your eyes on the Son of God, you will bump into your future mate. I actually didn't share that advice for the RN's sake, although I was talking to her. I wanted her assistant to hear it. I had a growing motherly desire for her to hear that advice. She was an attractive but unmarried Christian, just the type some man might take advantage of. She was listening, thoughtfully listening. Who would not drop a word for God? George Whitefield. The first thing the following day when we were alone, she said, "I've been thinking about what you said, to keep looking up to God, and He will make you bump into the right person." I encouraged her with some examples of people I knew. I've seen this strategy work over and over. Missionary Hudson Taylor said that God always chooses the best for those who leave the choice to Him. He knew from experience as well. While on the stroke hall, a physical therapist and an occupational therapist began coming by to help me begin to get out of bed. They both attended the vibrant church of the Highlands that had hosted the pastors' conference attended by my pastoral staff. Now the church was in its summer session of 21 days of fasting and prayer. Alan attended the Wednesday p.m. service and was ushered to a chair near the front. Shortly afterward, he turned in response to a tap on his shoulder. There was my occupational therapist, whom he had met earlier in my room. No wonder the guy had such a beautiful smile. He was one of those Jesus people. Another thing that kept the stroke hall from being depressing was seeing Alan so pumped about the 21 days of prayer and fasting at Church of the Highlands in Birmingham. He was actually able to get up early enough a few times to make the 6 a.m. prayer service. He is not a morning person. It was usually attended by about 1,400 people. Policemen had to be on hand at the end to direct traffic flow. Each day the service was on live feed through our laptop, so I got to see it live or later in the day since it was archived for 24 hours. Alan put my name along with a prayer request on the altar. The church's influence filtered down all over Birmingham. A man on the hospital housekeeping staff came at times and mopped my floor with delicious-smelling sour apple detergent. He said he did not attend Highland, but sometimes joined them in their outreach efforts. Alan and I also used our laptop to watch our own church services on Sunday. We never missed a service. On August 9th, Pastor Ryan did a shout-out to us from his pulpit. When patients on the stroke hall have enough strength to endure 3 hours of therapy a day, they are moved to the adjoining rehabilitation section of UAB, Spain Rehab. I had some transitioning to do, but I needed help.